Welcome to my new channel. I am starting over. I'm not going to be abandoning my existing channel, which you can see here. It's still going to be running, but I wanted a place where I could sort of journal and vlog about the startup things that I am currently doing, as well as my journey. And I don't even really intend for anyone to see this specific episode. I'm not going to share this video anywhere. It's just going to be on the channel to give you some context of who I am, what I've done. It's just here to give you some context. So hopefully by the time you're watching this video, maybe this channel has a ton of videos on it and I've done some like pretty cool things. And you're like, oh, how did it start? Where was he? Like, where did all this begin? This is the video that'll answer that question. First of all, you should know when it comes to startups, I've been doing it longer than I've been doing content. And it was sort of the main reason that I started enjoying code in the first place. It was the ability to create something that other people would actually be able to use and not do it because somebody told me to, but because I had this idea in my mind. It's that power of being able to take that thing in your brain, use some sort of mechanism like coding to make it in real life and have actual people benefit and use it. And you can see here, I used to make, like when I first started YouTube and stuff like that, a lot of tutorials for programming, but I did have a little stint where I actually updated people on what my plan for startups was. And I actually really enjoyed doing that vlog style content, even though nobody really cared about it, which is why I'm doing all of these on this new channel as opposed to my main one. Actually started learning programming in high school. I was told by one of my teachers that I was extremely horrible at it. And because they didn't want my low grade to tank my chances of getting into university, they recommended I drop it. So I thought programming wasn't for me, even though it was like my passion because I was a huge fan of video games and I wanted to be a game developer. Instead of programming, I picked up trying to be a professional StarCraft player. I got to Grandmaster, which is top 200 within 4 years of playing. But my plan after high school was actually to move to Korea and be a professional StarCraft player. But I also wasn't good enough at that to actually make it big. Even being top 200 in your region is like nowhere near good enough to make money. With esports, you literally have to be like top 10 in the world. Otherwise, you can't make a living off of it. So I ended up going to university for computer engineering. And I thought maybe I'd try my hand at hardware. But within the first year of going, I retook another programming course because it was mandatory. And I realized that I still love programming. And I sort of just went crazy with it. And even though I have 101 repositories on GitHub now, not even a lot of them are on here because I used Bitbucket back in the day. But I learned an extremely important lesson, which was that just because I didn't like programming in high school because of the way it was taught doesn't mean programming wasn't for me. I just had to do it in my way and start learning it in a way that made sense to me by building projects and just building cool things that I would want to use or other people would want to use. And that's when I really fell in love with it. And that's when I decided, like in 2015, that my goal would be to create a big tech startup of something really cool. And it has literally been 10 years since that day. And so much has happened. At my university, they had this little mock entrepreneurship boot camp, which I joined. They paid me like $2,000 for like the entire summer of showing up and working on the startup, which as a university student, we were so clueless as to what a startup actually was. We were just pretty much talking about making an app over and over again and just trying to build it, which took months because we were so bad at programming. And of course, when we did build it, nobody actually wanted to use it. And then the team fell apart because for some reason we had 5 co-founders. But building that got me in the room with a professor at my university who accepted me as an undergraduate research assistant for her PhD student. And all of the research I did was related to data mining and pretty much taking data from Twitter that she could then use with her artificial intelligence models as training data, because I think she was doing something related to sentiment analysis, and my tweets were pretty much what she would train or test her models on. On top of that, I participated in a ton of hackathons before they were cool. I was doing things like missing exams and labs to like go to the US and participate in like Yale's hackathon. And in one of those hackathons, I submitted my resume to a company called Intuit. And if you don't know Intuit, they're like the TurboTax guys. They have this huge, beautiful campus right next to Google's in Mountain View, California. And I remember having my phone interview with the actual person that would become my manager. And he was asking me these questions and I was just so excited about programming. Like he asked me a data structure and algorithms question and I got it because I'd been practicing. But then he also asked me like about the stuff I was doing at school. And I told him how I used to host like little coding boot camps for like all the people at my university, because my university wasn't known for programming. So the stuff I was doing, nobody had really done before and there was no one there to mentor them. So I started hosting all these events at my university. I told him about my research position and he ended up hiring me because of it. My first internship in the Bay Area. I flew there for 3 months and it it was probably like some of the funnest 3 months I think I've ever had. They gave us like a company car. Pretty much we were like just a bunch of kids that got to do whatever we want with corporate housing, a corporate car, a large salary. So that was one of the funnest jobs I think I've ever had. And when I asked my manager why he gave me the job over the people from like Berkeley or Stanford that applied, he told me it was because I seemed more interested and more, quote, passionate about programming than anyone else. I ended up taking a full-time job with Intuit after when I graduated, but I left around 5 months in because I wanted to start my own thing. That was really my whole dream, was to start my own startup and build my own thing. And in the 5 months I was there, I had to like repay some of my relocation fees and stuff like that because I left so abruptly. Like my stocks didn't invest. I pretty much left with less money than when I went there 5 months prior. The cost of living was expensive, so I was already saving only a tiny bit a month based on my salary. And because I had to repay some of the stuff I used for like transportation and my flights and stuff like that, and the deposit on my apartment that I broke, I literally actually lost money by going there and working for 5 months. But I thought everything would be crazy because I would go back to Canada and everything would be great, but it turns out it wasn't. I spent like 2 years trying to come up with different business ideas, everything from e-commerce to making websites for people to trying to make a tech startup, and none of it worked. And I was living with my mom at the time, and the family I grew up in was always like very financially troubled. So I was like having to help her like pay rent and like afford stuff because she had just lost her job. And I didn't want us to literally be homeless. So I would pay for a whole bunch of things and I would just put on credit cards. And it got to the point where I was able to open up all these credit cards because when I had a job, I was making like a 6-figure income. But as soon as I didn't have a job anymore, I didn't have any income, but I still had the credit card. So I started putting everything on all these credit cards. And I very quickly, within 2 years, got like $30,000 in credit card debt. It was a crazy time for me. I was dating my now wife for about 2 years back then. And I remember every weekend she would come over and I literally wouldn't have the money to buy groceries for the week to like have food for lunch and dinner for me and my mom. And she would like take us to the grocery store and literally she would buy groceries for us. And she's the same age as me, but she transferred universities. So she graduated 2 years later. So she was still in university at the time. And a lot of the money was from like her part-time jobs that she was working and even sometimes her student loans that she would use to literally buy us groceries. So eventually enough was enough and I maxed out all my credit cards and I ended up getting a consulting job on TopTal. I got into this platform like probably when I was in university and I never really used it at all, but it was pretty much like an outsourcing platform for developers. So they would have a bunch of companies that need developers and they would vet it. It was a very rigorous vetting process, and they would vet us. Only the top 3% would get in or whatever, and then they would outsource us to the clients. And the way it works is you chose your own rate, so you would say what you want. They would quote the client something with like a 25 to 30% markup, and then you would just get paid whatever your rate was. So I just chose the same rate I was making at my job in California, which was 50 USD an hour back in the time. And I ended up getting a job. And within a couple months, I was able to pay off all the debt that I had. And then it actually got to the point where I just kept increasing my rate over and over and over again. And I just kept getting more jobs. It got to the point where the highest offer I got was 160 US an hour, which if you think about it, because of the way I sort of routed it through my company, I didn't have to pay as much taxes on it as when I had a full-time job. I was now making all this money. It was being converted to Canadian because it was all in US. And I was paying like way less taxes than I was working full-time. So all of a sudden I started to save a ton of money. And now that I had all the money, I was like, well, it's time to start another SaaS. And that was around the time that I started making all these updates on my YouTube. I've probably had maybe like 40 different business ideas that I worked at least 1 month each on in the past 10 years. And the one I was working on at the time was Teamly. By that time, I had already gotten an interview with Y Combinator in 2019 where they actually flew you out to do the interviews, but I didn't make it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just start something again and just get into YC. Little did I know that would lead to this point where I have been rejected by YC 8 times and I have built and sold a startup in all that time, but we'll get to that in a bit. But while I was working a consulting job at TopTal, Riot was just about to release their new esport called Valorant, and one of the developers that I worked with at my current TopTal job was really good, so I invited him and both of us co-founded this company, which was a data analytics company for this video game. And it was cool because for once I was using my knowledge and passion for esports and pairing it with what I was doing in programming, and it felt like we found a real niche because I had seen other websites like op.gg do so well in League of Legends to the point where they're worth over $100 million. And I thought, League of Legends is made by Riot, Valorant is made by Riot, Riot, if I move into their new game, surely it's going to be just as successful. But little did I know that Riot actually sucks, and they learned a lot from League of Legends. They actually didn't like third-party developers building platforms like OP.GG on their ecosystem. So despite having all this great data for League of Legends that made all these third-party platforms so successful, they didn't do anything remotely close to the same thing for Valorant. It got to the point where they just laid off the entire like third-party API team for Valorant, and we had to go through like all these intermediaries, and it made progress on the platform extremely slow because we were building this whole data analytics platform without support from the people that gave us the data in the first place. Despite that, we still built an amazing tool. You can tell neither of us were really UX or front-end developers at the time, but we built some crazy code base here, and we had almost every single team in the scene using us, paying us anywhere from $50 to $100 a month. And 4 years passed where I pretty much worked on this company full-time while working a full-time job on the side to like pay my bills. And we wanted to bootstrap the entire company, so a ton of my income was actually going and being invested in the company to pay for things like employees and our staff. And around 4 years in, we realized we had already like sort of hit the ceiling for all the teams that would possibly pay us. And we had two choices. Either A, we start diversifying into different games, which would have taken us a long time because, as you can imagine, this entire database is built specifically for like the game we're building. To go into a different game would almost be like starting over again. Or we try and sell the company. So we ended up selling the company. We knew we were going to sell it around 2 years ago at the beginning of 2024, but from 2024 to 2025, that was all time spent like talking to companies, talking to organizations, and negotiating. And it was such a draining process because you would get far with one company and then all of a sudden they would just drop everything and be like, you know what, we're not interested anymore. And luckily, we did find a buyer and we sold the company at the end of last year, so the end of 2024. In the time that I was running Run It Back, we knew that we wanted to sell the company eventually, and I had just finished my contract working with Stripe through TopTal, and OpenAI had just released, and I was like, holy shit, this is gonna like change everything, like the very, very, very first version of GPT. So I started looking into AI. My wife, who's also a software engineer, she was at a startup at the time, but before that she worked at Amazon. I convinced her to go in on a new project with me where we would somehow use this new AI technology and apply it to some field that we're really good at and get into Y Combinator. And over the past 24 months, we have literally gone through, I want to say maybe like 9 different startup ideas. We start off with a platform that allows you to find content creators for marketers and match them together based on AI and what the marketers are looking for. Now it seems like a kind of basic idea, but 2 years ago, that was like cutting edge stuff. And I was just starting to blow up as a content creator. So I was like, oh man, it matches my expertise. And that's what YC says you need. But in reality, that did not go well at all. That field is so oversaturated. Marketers don't really want to work with you. And AI wasn't good enough to help us build. And we were still new to what we were building. So it took us like 2 months to build the platform. And then we launched it and nobody wanted to use it. And trying to get a hold of these like marketers and agencies that wanted to use software engineering content creators, even regular content creators, was one of the most like annoying things to do. Like I set up this thing that was sending 200 LinkedIn cold DMs and emails a day, and it was just horrible. We then pivoted into a developer tool, then another developer tool, and then an AI infrastructure tool. And we just kept learning and building and starting over and over again for the past 2 years. And honestly, the best part about starting over, especially when it comes to startups, is that you get to do everything you did last time. You get to take all the good parts of all the stuff you did before and get rid of all the bad parts. So every time you start over, it's just better and better and better as long as you're learning. And even though I stuck to like a sort of failing business model with my esports company for 5 years, I sort of learned from that. I realized if we had taken that time and dedication, those 4 years, and the amount of sheer like engineering power that we put towards making analytics for a video game, and we put it towards a real problem in like the real world with real use cases, we could have had a way bigger exit. So I vowed to never make that mistake again. If I'm going to build something, the TAM, the total addressable market, is going to be massive compared to like what my esports business was. So I didn't want to do anything that would only lead to maybe another like 6 to 7 to 8 figure exit. If we were going to get an exit and we were going to do a big thing and have like a lot of engineering behind it, it has to be worth it to the point where it could become $1 billion business. Apart from that, I learned so much about building. I mean, we were getting like anywhere from 300,000 to like 1 million visitors a month on our old esports site. So there was a lot of like learning on how to like scale up infrastructure and handle all of that usage. But when I got to start over and use all the new tools, stuff like Railway, stuff like GitHub Actions and stuff like AWS code pipelines, it was such a huge deal. And that's why even today, I'm very adamant about upgrading my workflow every so often to make sure I'm never too behind. I will literally spend a couple days rewriting a repo if it saves me time in the long run. I do not mind constantly starting over and constantly upgrading in order to get better. I think it's one of the best traits you can have as an entrepreneur and as a founder, and of course, as a software engineer. And for the past year, we started focusing a lot on infrastructure play. So we had a stint where we did recruiting, but at the beginning of the year, we did like an AI agent library, and it was a public open source library. Then we pivoted to recruiting for a bit, which was a terrible idea. Recruiting is like such a fucking mess, especially for software engineering. And then we started playing around with evals and benchmarks, and that leads us to where we are today. A couple months ago, I made something called SimKit, which was like an open source repository. It allowed you to pretty much like simulate your AI agent in long-term situations. We took inspiration from Anden Labs Vending Bench because they pretty much made an AI agent that ran a vending machine, and it was like the coolest thing to me. So I wanted to make something similar. I made the platform that allows you to run any type of simulation. One of the ones I did was a pawn shop simulation where AI runs a pawn shop, and we would fake users and have other AIs that would come in to buy and sell things and see how well like a current AI model could run a pawn shop. And it turns out the problem with this was the same problem we had with all of our ideas, which is I was always trying to think like too far in the future of what people would need, and I wasn't listening to what people actually needed. So eventually I started like talking to more people on Instagram, using my story to try and soft launch ideas and see what people needed. And we landed on the idea of sort of benchmarks and AI analytics. So we made an entire benchmark site for people to like compare different models together. And one big problem we had was people were spending a ton of money on one model, but they didn't know if they could just use a different model and save that money instead. One of the people that had this problem actually works at Stan, which is a great company, and their engineering team is all in Toronto, and I'm friends with them because I judged their hackathon and made some content in their office. So I went down and I watched how their engineers worked, and I was like, holy shit, there's a huge gap, not just like in A/B testing models, but in observability as a whole. And this is where like a big learning comes in, because last year I was talking to people on Instagram and everyone was telling me what a big deal observability was. And then I went and I did some competitive research, and I found there was already one big platform that was covering observability. And I was like, oh shit, the market is completely saturated. Guess I can't do that idea. I have to come up with something more clever, something more cutting edge. But that company has literally not really grown or changed anything since I found them last year. In fact, more competitors have come up in the last year and have absolutely surpassed them in usage. When I thought the market was already saturated, these other companies like Braintrust were coming out of nowhere and just taking the whole market. And that's when I realized like you don't have to just choose a big market, then choose something that has an intersection of exactly what you're interested in and what you're passionate about, and then also make it cutting edge enough that nobody's really saturated the market yet. You can find something that is a big problem and use that as a wedge, use that as a starting point to build better software and just outcompete. A lot of the big software companies that are now seen as the incumbents in their respective niche weren't actually the first movers. They actually came kind of late, and they still dominated because they had a better product. And that's what led us to where we are today. Around like literally 18 days ago, we went into that customer's office and we talked to their engineers and realized what they actually needed was just a better observability platform than the one that they had. So we built an observability platform from scratch. I launched it on my Instagram. All of a sudden, a ton of companies actually need it because it's a real problem. And the nice part about building something that already exists is not only is it a real problem, but users have experience using other platforms. They have all their complaints. They know what they don't like. So it makes it a lot easier for you to listen to them and tell you exactly what they actually want from a platform. So that's exactly what we did. I got a bunch of users. I started building the platform out, and literally for like every day in the past 18 days, we worked like almost 16 hours a day building the platform into something that was actually best in class and is already better than half of our competitors, if not all of them. And I'm kind of annoyed that it took me this long to learn this lesson, but if you're actually world class at what you do and you are good, like I have worked on so many different startups, so many enterprise companies, I have the industry experience. And on top of that, while I was working full-time in the industry, I was also running a full-time startup dealing with millions of users. When you combine those two things together, it turns out you start to develop a really good taste for what good software feels like, looks like, and how to make it and architect it in the first place. So within 18 days, we were able to create a platform that is literally best in class and better than all of our competitors. I cannot believe it took me this long to learn that you don't have to come up with some crazy brand new idea that's going to be $1 billion idea that no competitors have a grasp on the market yet. You can just compete with them and just be better. And that is where we currently are. And that's what I really want to document on this channel. I want to document the journey of us building up Phallum Labs. Right now, it's an AI observability platform. Who knows what it'll be in 3 months from now? Hopefully, still that, but much more on top of it. And I want to use this channel sort of as a way to benchmark my own progress. I want this channel to almost not even be found for another 2 years. And by the time it is found in 2 years from now, I want us to be like a huge success story. Or if we're a failure, at least it can be something that I myself can look back on and try to figure out where I went wrong or see what my thinking was back in the day and how much I actually grew from the process. But I really hope in 2 to 3 years from now, somebody is watching this video and they're like, wow, so this is how it all started. They're looking at this like from the backwards lens from where they are and they're relating to me right now. Maybe you relate to where I am right now. Maybe you relate to where I was a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. What I wish I had was the ability to look back at someone like Michael Seibel or Dalton or Paul Graham or Elon Musk. I wish I could look back at their journey and see their thoughts, because when history writes itself backwards, you usually see the people that's writing that history frame things in a way where it seems like that person was an outlier, like they were always going to make it. You don't really see the mindset of the person in the moment. You don't see how they had self-doubt, how they had failures. All the stuff that led them to where they currently were is a combination of all the failures that they had to go through in the first place. And you never really get to see how they feel when they tackle those failures. I am 10 years in and I've only had like one quote successful exit of like a esports company. I know it's still better than nothing, but if you asked me where I would be 10 years ago, I definitely thought I would have gotten a lot farther than I am right now. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I don't regret it. I needed to learn all these lessons, but sometimes those learnings happen really slowly and it feels like you're just getting punched in the face over and over and over again on that journey. The one thing I've always had going for me is I always knew deep down, like, this is what I want to do. And even if I build this company up and I sell it, I'll probably like within the next day start thinking about the next thing I'm going to do. I just want to do this over and over and over again. And I think me knowing and being clear that this is the thing I wanted to do, it makes it so that whenever like failure happens, yeah, it sucks, but I'm never at risk of like quitting. Like, there's no alternative for me. There's no like, oh, you know what? I guess I just straight up, I'm never going to make it. I'm going to have to go get another job. Like, I literally started ramping up my content because I needed another form of income that wasn't working a full-time job, that I didn't have to spend all that time doing, that could still support me while I worked on my startups. And that's why I built my whole like content creation stuff in the last 2 years, literally because I needed something to support me so that I could continue working on my startup so I didn't have to get another job. I always knew this is what I was going to do, and I'm probably going to do this for a very, very long time. So I think that alone has been probably the biggest benefit I've had over the last 10 years, like just knowing that there's no way in hell I'm ever going to give up. And I mean, if I do this for another 10 or 20, 50 years, like eventually something's going to have to work, right? Like, I hope I'm not like so slow or so bad at learning that within like the next 20 years of doing this, I'm never going to have any success at all, right? I mean, it's probably possible, but I feel like it would be so crazy. Like, I would hope that I can course correct on my journey so that something like that would never happen. But where we currently are, we just launched like 18 days ago or whatever, the new Phallum. Like, I think we have a really good workflow. I think we're moving at a speed that we've never moved at before because we're actually building something people need. And it turns out when you have a lot of feedback from people, it actually increases your speed because you have confidence in what you're building. It's more motivating. I'll wake up and get a bunch of DMs from our users saying, oh, there's a bug here, or I want this feature. And it really just keeps you going. And I think that's something we've been missing for the past 2 years, is actual people that need and depend and rely and like our software. So I'm really glad we had it now. And I think this time's going to be different. I say it every time, but I think this time's going to be different. We don't have any funding. I'm looking to maybe raise a seed like in March or February or something. Who knows how that'll go. My current goal is to try and hit 100K ARR by the beginning of April. That might be too ambitious. Like, we don't even have pricing figured out yet, and all our quote customers are just using it for free. So yeah, maybe I'll look back at this in a couple months and think I'm crazy for thinking that we could hit 100K ARR in 4 months, but that's currently the goal. We're also joining a residency in Miami from Focal VC. So that'll be cool. Like, instead of building in my bedroom by myself and my wife like downstairs building, we'll be surrounded by other founders. It'll be like a sort of like mini YC experience, I guess, is sort of the hope. So we'll see how that goes. I'm thinking of doing something similar to Matt and Ari. So the entire like reason I'm even starting this channel is because Matt and Ari heavily inspired me. Like, they have a weekly vlog where they hired like a videographer who like captures everything they're doing week to week, and then puts it into this like nice, cool 10-minute video. I don't have an editor. I don't have a videographer. Even this video right now, like I don't want anyone to see this video for the next like 2 years at least. So I don't mind that it's just me sitting here talking to the camera without like knowing if anyone's actually gonna watch it or not. But I maybe while we're in Miami, like I might want to start putting out like maybe vlog styles, like maybe just vlog myself throughout the week, and then like at the end of the week just make one little mega edit out of it, and just post it. It won't be as like clean and polished and as aesthetic as their stuff because I don't have like the staff to do it. Like I don't know. Maybe I'll hire like a videographer one day to do it. But so yeah, that's pretty much it. If you actually stuck around for all this rambling, I hope this helped you. I hope it was relatable. I hope it showed you that like if I am successful in the future, that not every single person like that is successful always had everything working out for them. Like it's been 10 years and it feels like I've just been punched in the face over and over and over again. Even like the amount I sold my company for, like we made like for 5 years of time, like we made a very low return on like the money we put into it being a bootstrap company. So even that, like it was great that we sold it, but it wasn't like some major success or anything. Um, Sometimes you just get punched in the face over and over and over again for 10 years, and then maybe all the stars align and then you like turn the key and the door actually opens for once, and once it does, it like opens and it just floods in. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching this in 2 years from now. You probably have already subscribed, because why else would you be watching this long ass video of me ranting? And yeah, I'll let you know how it goes, I guess.